Right, so firstly, this is the end of the series, and we start a new series next week on Monday night. So we're going to roll straight in, and the next one is on, the topic is how to change your fate, I believe, something like that. But that's what I'm talking about. Whether the title is more fancy than that, I can't remember, but it's how to change your fate, and if you can. I should throw that in just in case.
Is that the next course?
Starting from next Monday night.
Is that how to change your faith?
Fate, not faith. Your destiny. Yeah. So that's then. We don't need to talk about that any further now because that's for next week. So tonight we're going to do something slightly different because I want to complete what we've been learning, but then I would like to do something with the learning. So let's just recap what we've done over this series very, very briefly. We spent some time understanding that the soul is a part of a much larger, complex system than just our individual personality. And then we also spoke about the context of the soul within Adam's soul system. And that Adam is a conglomerate of all souls, and a result of Adam's behavior in the Garden of Eden, all the souls were impacted, and therefore all the souls became involved in this mixture of good and bad. That's what the Eitz Hadas of Tov and Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and bad, becomes an eaten product, and therefore there's good and bad in everything, and that results in the souls all needing reincarnation. We then went on to talk about the concept of soulmates, and that what is a soulmate? That a soulmate is not just our other half, but a soulmate is actually the other component of our soul. And there is a split of the soul before it comes down into this world, as it makes its way into the lower Garden of Eden, which is the holding bay until both souls get born. So we then spoke about how the souls come together at some point during the life. They're brought together, and sometimes we engage with our soulmate and sometimes we don't. We spoke about the fact that we may come cross paths with our soulmate, but at the time it may not be time for us to commit to being with our soulmate for whatever reason, and our soulmate passes us by. I used an example of where your soulmate is on a completely different level to you, and that level manifests in that level difference manifests in ensuring that you're part of different stratas of society or different segments of society, so that even if you cross paths, it's never going to happen. And why that should happen, that a soulmate should meet the other, not marry, is all part of a greater discussion around a person's personal growth and whether they've achieved the level to be allowed to engage with their soulmate. But either way, even if we don't marry our soulmate, we marry our support mates. And a support mate is a soul that fits with our soul. It's not our other half, but it is a good fit. It's a bit like a generic. You know, a generic tablet is a generic medication, let's say. It's a good fit, just can't call it Panadol or Nurofen. It's got to be called like, Pananananamol. It does the same thing as Panadol, but it's sold for half the price. Or the Coles brand or the Safeway brand. It's some generic. It's the same thing, but it's just not the brand name. I don't know if it really makes a difference in context of medicine, but in context of soulmates, if you get a generic soulmate, generic for your soul, it's not your soulmate, but it does everything that a soulmate does, which is it helps you in your journey. And then last week we spoke about love. We spoke about love being that feeling of realizing that the soulmate that you're with is your other half, and therefore you need to live a life with intention of realizing that this other person is you, and you are them. And love is the feeling that you get when you come to that realization, that experience, etc. So tonight I want to do something else. I don't want to keep building more information into what we're doing. What I'd like to now do is shift it from being an academic discussion into our life, because we've been learning Kabbalah together for a few years, and the Kabbalah that this particular series was based on was on the teachings of Rabbi Vital, who was a Talmud, a student of the Arizal. And we've also been basing it on the Zohar, which is authored by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Now, when they wrote it, they're not maths teachers who are just there to teach you how mathematics works. Here's the mathematics of the soul. Because that's not what Kabbalah is. Kabbalah is not just there for our entertainment. I know we present it in a very fun way and we cover a lot of ground, but Kabbalah is actually a deep study of Jewish mysticism. And the reason why it is encoded is because, number one, there's a lot of complexity to it, and there's a lot of micro detail, and to the uneducated person, it's very hard to contextualize, and it could move a person out of the realm of wanting to be a part of the world. They want to escape and just live on the light of Kabbalah, which is not uncommon for people that learn Kabbalah. And Kabbalah is not meant to do that. So they've encoded it so that people don't start mucking around with it. And further, within Kabbalah, there are deep secrets and mystical, there's mystical knowledge which can lead a person to have a deep understanding not just of the forces that make the world exist, but also how to muck around with those forces, which can lead to irresponsible behavior, or it could lead to malicious behavior in the name of spirituality. So things had to be encoded and encrypted. But there's also a lighter problem, and this is a problem that exists around the world today. Today, Kabbalah is still very, very popular. It was popular in the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, it's still popular today. And so what we have is lots of people who study it because it's interesting. And that's an insult to Kabbalah, to study it just because it's interesting. Like, if it got boring, we wouldn't study it. It's not honoring Kabbalah. The Chachamim, when they wrote and they taught Kabbalah, it was for the purpose of deepening a person's relationship with the infinite. Kabbalah is the study of the expression of the infinite. If you want a good word for that, it's Elikus. Elikus, or another word would be Or, the light. So it's not even discussing the source of the light. We don't discuss the source of, we discuss the expression itself. So we're not talking about the source of light. We're talking about angels, we're talking about souls, we're talking about God's expression in a mystical way, but it's not God itself. So it talks around it. Why would a person want to study that? Because we live in a physical world. And we have a way of living. And what Kabbalah provides some people is an escape. You can escape everything in the world, which get lost. It's like, when you study any subject in depth, it becomes interesting that you kind of just stop caring for other things. That's one problem of learning Kabbalah. And the other problem of learning Kabbalah is that, or further to that, it removes you from society, it removes you from your family, it removes you. But if you learn Kabbalah in a structured way, it does quite the opposite. It enriches your life in what you're doing. And so what we need to do is understand what we have learned over the last 3 weeks, how does this enrich our life? Because we've all gone off over the last few weeks going, gee, that's interesting, reincarnation, but what's it going to do for us practically? And that's why I brought out the Hamantashen and the L'chaims, because tonight's class, we've got to really bring the ideas into a point where we are impacted and changed as a result of what we've learned over the last 3 weeks. I suppose that's how this segment of Spiritgrow's offerings got called Transcendental Kabbalah. It's to transcend the mundane with the teachings of Kabbalah. So let's go back to the very beginning. What we said is that Adam is not just the first person, but Adam is all the souls. And when we talk about reincarnation, what we clarified is there is one thing that reincarnation is not. You were never here before. Reincarnation does not mean that you are here and that you're coming back. You are here now and you're never coming back. And you never were before. There was no Menachem Wolf before 33 years ago. 34 almost. There was no such thing as Menachem Wolf. And there never will be a Menachem Wolf after this. Menachem Wolf's going to live, hopefully, 90, 100 years, 120 years. And that's it. And whatever Menachem Wolf does right or whatever Menachem Wolf does wrong is only going to impact Menachem Wolf in his life. Where the reincarnation comes up is that the soul of Menachem Wolf is part of something that is far more fluid and far more infinite. If you would look at life as a block of time, so there's life, it exists within a much larger timeline. So think about this. You come from your parents, and your parents come from their parents, and their parents come from their parents. And if you start thinking about it, you are part of this long chain of people, and from you will come more people, and from them will come more people, and from them will come more people, and you're just this dot in the middle of a continuum. Now, the same is true of our soul. Our soul existed, and it has been broken up, but not into a whole lot of pieces over there, but it's almost like it's on a conveyor belt, and different parts of the soul will live out in different periods of history, because every component of the soul has something that it needs to achieve. And what we are is a single component of the soul. That's what we are. We are a single component. We said that about that atom is many parts. We are a single component of a single soul. And so if we do what is correct and what we are required to achieve, then our part of our soul will go back into a position that it has not been since Adam was first created. It's like, I do this almost every day. I cut up my kids' fruit for lunch. So I cut up either an orange or an apple. And one of the things is I have to then get that fruit all cut up into a little square container. And you can't just put all the pieces. You actually have to put the orange back together. It's the only way it fits. And there's this absolute joy when some mornings I cut it and it just holds together really well and I can just drop it in. And then other mornings where it always does that. And there's always one piece that's just popping up or down or moving too deep into the circle. So the soul is like all those pieces of orange or apple coming back into the single whole. It hasn't been unified since Adam. What it has been is being in a state of tohu. It's been in a state of chaos. It's been in a state of lying on the chopping board in lots of pieces, waiting for someone to bring it back together or waiting for it to magically reform itself. And what the soul does is it reforms itself because it develops a pool to be able to do that if we do what's right in our life. What does that mean? We are, as I spoke about last week, we are not our consciousness, we are not our feelings, we are not our body, we are none of that. We are all of that and we are none of that. We are so much more. And what we do, the responses to every single situation, doesn't just impact our body, but it impacts our soul. And when we do something, it will change the status, the image, the shape of our soul. So it's a bit like you get a new phone and it's all beautiful, and then already after one day of using it, it's got the grease from your fingers on it, and it's already got a scratch here and there. Depending on how you use your phone will define what the phone is going to look like as time goes on. And there are no cases for the soul. The soul doesn't have some sort of smash-proof case. The soul is what it is. So every single thing you do, when you eat, it's impacting the soul. When you drink, it impacts the soul. When you talk, it impacts the soul, because it's the soul expressing itself. The soul is more like you're the puppeteer. And what we do with our soul, it's just at our own disposal. And so if you do something wrong in your life, then it's the soul that's done something wrong. If you do something right, then it's the soul that's done something right. And why this is so important is because if the soul has achieved the correction in what it needs, it's like a rubber tube in a tire. If you get a puncture, if you find the hole and you put the sticky patch on top, then you're going to be able to pump it up and it's going to be able to function. And if you don't, it's not going to function. It remains a rubber tire, it remains a tube, but as long as it's got the hole, the air is going to continue escaping. We get a soul in order to put a patch on it. We've been given, we are the tire fix-it people. We have a tube that has been damaged, and what we need to do is put a thing on it. Damage doesn't mean it's bad. Just needs a thing. And until you use it, as soon as you do that, it can go back into a tire. But that rubber tube can be used for so many other things in the meanwhile. You can hang it up and hang other things from it. You can I don't know, you can wear it as a necklace. It can be used in many ways. The soul is able to live a life in many profound, magical ways. But that isn't what the soul was given to us for. There is something that we need to do in our life that is going to be the specific bandage. Because when Adam ate from the tree of knowledge, the impact on the souls was not the same, because every part of the soul, it reflects a different part of the body. So let's say you get, I don't know, bitten by a whole lot of mosquitoes, or you go hiking and you fall down and you roll into a bush, and now you've got prickles all over you. You've got prickles everywhere, all over your body. The feeling of the prickles is not the same in different parts of the body, and the damage from the prickles is not the same in different parts of the body. There's one type of prickle that's going to prevent you from being able to sit down, and that's not the same as a prickle in your hand. A prickle in your hand will never be as disastrous as a prickle in your tuchus. It won't. It's the same prickle, but it's a different part of the body, and the impact is completely different. And so if every part of the soul is in every part of the body, and every part of Adam's soul is not just everyone's soul, but his finger, his fingernail, his toe, his nose, these are all different sections of the soul system. When he got those prickles in his nose, and when he got those prickles in his leg, when he got those prickles in his arm, the impact was different, because this is an arm, it's not a nose, and therefore the impact is different, and therefore the soul that is over here needs a different form of tikkun to the soul that's over here. So each soul gets born into a different era of history, into a different life, into a different home, into a different family, in order to receive the tikkun that it needs to fix itself. And so for some prickles you can pull it out with your fingernails, and other prickles you need tweezers, and other prickles you just have to wait. It's too deep. You've got to wait for for the skin to push it out, or however it is. That I don't know how splinters that you can't get out come out, but they disappear over time. I know, because it's not like I've got pieces of wood in me. So they somehow come out, but there are different processes depending on where the prickle is. And so too with our souls. We have all been born into a different period of history and time, into different families, because we need to be in that moment, because that's the situation which is going to provide the soul with the opportunity to be able to go through tikkun, to go through the healing, to go through the correction, to go through the order that needs to be created out of the chaos of reality. So let's give a good example for that. A non-Jew who converts to Judaism. What's a non-Jew that converts to Judaism? We've got a person who was born into a different faith, who's born into a different spiritual system, is born into a different status, and they want to jump. They want to change status. You can't change status. You can't. Well, it's like saying a person wants to become a giraffe. You can't do that. How does that happen? I want to. It doesn't matter what you want to. Sprinkle water. It doesn't work like that. You can sprinkle giraffes all you want. They don't become people, and vice versa. Unless you say that the person is not what they look like. What is a convert? A ger shenisgayer, a person who was estranged, and a ger is a stranger, shenisgayer that was estranged, which means that they are not what they look like. A convert, before they convert, is a person that says, I am not this. I'm not talking about what you know in real life with converts. I'm telling you what the spirituality of converts are. They are people who are feeling deeply out of place. Why? No idea. But they don't feel that they are what they are. They feel they need to be something else. They feel they need to go through this conversion. Why? They feel Jewish, or they feel that that's where they belong. There's some sort of natiyah, there's some sort of pull that is drawing them to that. And that's then the process of learning how to be a Jew, because what, as the Arizal explains, could be going on is that for whatever reason, this is a ruach or a neshama of a Yehud, of a Jew. It's the ruach and neshama of a particular soul group that needs to be pegged on to the nefesh but the nefesh itself has had its tikkun. That base level of soul has had a tikkun, so it gets attached to some other soul that's going to be born, because a ruach needs a nefesh in order to be born. The 5 levels of soul I'm talking about, the higher levels need a base level, otherwise they can't be born. But if there is no base level available because the base level has done its tikkun, it doesn't need reincarnation, what's going to happen with the ruach? The ruach gets pegged onto a different soul. It gets born, and although it is its biological family, it is not its spiritual family. Or it is partially its spiritual family, but not entirely, because the ruach didn't come from this soul system. And therefore the person says, I need to change. I need to go to a different place. I need to practice a different tradition, not just because I believe it or I like it, but because I feel it's me. That's why it's so important to love the convert, because the convert is a person that's lived an incredible life. It's a person that, imagine you were dropped off in the desert and you made it home. That's what a convert is. A convert is a person that's born completely out of place and finds their way home. That's sort of heroic stuff. That's how the news generally finish their story. And now, for something really upbeat. Young Kyle was dropped off in a desert not 3 months ago without any water or food. And he's come home, and we've got shots of Kyle coming home tonight, which we're going to leave you off with tonight. Good night, good night. And you watch young Kyle who's come home, and you go, wow, Kyle, you hero. Because when the soul it comes back, it's an incredible moment, because the person has all the creature comforts of living the life that they do, and yet they say, no, I want to go somewhere else. And they go through an impossible challenge of convert. It's such a hard challenge. So what is this? This is a particularly interesting case of tikkun. It's a particularly interesting case of a soul that's been reincarnated, and it needs to find its path, and that is part of its whole journey. And every single one of us has a journey for our soul of where we need to go in order to be Masaka now, in order to correct what Adam did. So think about it now. You're how old? You're 50, you're 60, you're 80, you're 20. How old are you? Before this, your soul was waiting in a holding bay in the Garden of Eden. It was born in, it was brought out of the infinite, it was brought out of the light, and it was placed into a space, the Garden of Eden, which is not a space as we relate to space. And then it was born to your mother, to your parents. Your mother gives birth. And in that moment, your soul enters a body. And with that, time begins. You begin living. And you develop a personality, and you become very acquainted with yourself to the point that you become egocentric, which means that you start looking at your life to the exclusion of everyone else's life. You exist to the exclusion of everyone else. This is me, this is you, we're not the same, I am I, you are you, all that sort of stuff. And there's before I existed and now that I exist. That's how I see it. It's not before you exist and after you exist. It's before you existed and now that I exist. Now that I exist is a way of saying, okay, I can only see life from my point of view. That's all there is. That's all there is, the way I see life. But what if we saw life from our soul's point of view? I existed without a body, then I exist with a body, and then I'm going to exist without a body. And the time that I get inside a body is the time in which I can create tikkun, I can create a correction. Here I am, I've been waiting on the bike rack for all of eternity to be able to live a life of get my patch. However, I've got to get a patch because I'm born into this body. I get a patch because I'm born into that body. I'm born into Africa, into lower socioeconomic. I'm born into Russia, into the oligarch's home. I'm born in Israel. I'm born in America. I'm born in Antarctica. I'm born there. And I had to go through all sorts of things. And when we look at the macro reincarnation story of the first week, that why are you born in Antarctica? Because for whatever reason you had to go through those experiences, whatever trauma or whatever love, so that would set you up for some other point in life. If you notice, everything that has happened in your life has set you up for the next moment. You don't always see it, but we've all lived enough time in our lives that we can see, hey, isn't that interesting? And I try to do that all the time. Every time I go through an experience, I try to file the experience away of, okay, what have I learned here? Positive and mostly negative, mostly from negative experiences. Because many negative experiences that I have had completely empowered me and forewarned me for much worse things to come. And I was like, hey, I know what's going on here. I know this. I've been here. I know what to do. So for whatever reason, we have to live through the experience that we have. Why do we have abuse? Why do we have hate? Why do we have pain? Why do we have love? Why do we have everything? It's all part of the soul's journey. Doesn't make it right. I'm just telling you what's happening. It's happened. That's what it is. But the question is not why it happens. That's for a different class. But tonight the question is, what happens to the soul as a result of it? And what happens to the soul is going through something. And as a result, the soul is hopefully being improved so that when the body dies, the soul is able to come out accomplished, having achieved something because of the experiences that it went through, the lessons and the learnings of what it went through, and then the implementation of that lesson. That's what life is. The learning, the development, and the implementation of change. We are all behind the number 8 ball. That's number one. We are all almost too weak for ourselves. Almost. We're all only as strong as what we are. No one here is stronger than themselves. And everyone here is almost weaker than themselves. Meaning that we almost always... You notice that the voice in your head can get you to do stupid things. There's a voice in your head that can get you to do stupid things. And we do stupid things. Then we wonder, why did I do that? Because we had a moment of weakness. But who weakened me? I weakened me. And the voice in my head, the feeling in my heart, the impulse that I had made me do something. It didn't make me. I did something. And I thought in that moment I could justify it. You'll notice that you'll never be too weak to do something that you don't want to do. The voice in your head is never going to say, go kill someone. It might say, go fantasize about killing someone. I would never do that. So that's what we do. So we're weak enough to imagine it, but some people are weak enough to do it because they are at that point of weakness that part of their animal soul is able to get them to do something stupid like that. And it's not stupid for them. It's very smart. That's why they do it. They think it's smart in the moment. So we can weaken ourselves in usually around pleasure. We become very weak, but no one outside is weakening us. It's to ourselves. And at the same time, we can push ourselves. But we can't push ourselves too hard. We can only push ourselves, as in too hard for us. We can only push ourselves to a point where it's really hard. But then you can't go beyond that. You can't do the impossible. But this is all subjective. It's not objective. You can't look at someone else and say, I think you can push yourself harder. You can say that someone, but only people know if they can push themselves harder. So we live this life, and we live a life of experience, and we live a life of reactions, and we live a life of doing, and if we're doing it in an informed way, through the interpretation of reality of Torah, and through the practice of mitzvot, then the neshama gets a tikkun. The soul gets what it requires in its 80 or 90 years in this world. You get married. So I want you to think about, for a moment, for those of you who are married, I want you to think about, or those who are in a relationship and think about getting married, I want you to think about what that means. That you are with someone who is holding your hand to better you. That's why they're there. You marry someone who's going to better you. Not because they're going to teach you. You don't marry your preacher. You don't marry your teacher. You marry someone who you get along with, who you are attracted to, who you love, and who you feel has good qualities about them that makes you want to be around them. And you allow them to rub off on you. Because as we said last week, or maybe it was at the end of 2 weeks ago, that often we will end up marrying someone who's quite different to us. And when we marry someone who's different to us, that differentness can rub off on us because often that difference is our weakness and it's their strength. And so we go through life holding their hand. Now, I want you to stop and think about, so you have existed for your soul has existed for a long time. The first thing we need to do is have Rachmanis. Do you know that? You're meant to live with having a state of Rachmanis for your soul. Rachmanis is compassion. This thing called life. It's not an object. You can't touch it. It's you. But it's the deepest part of you. It comes from a space called the infinite. It was once privy to all knowledge. It experienced bliss 24/7. It was completely part of the eternal. It didn't notice necessarily its imperfection, but it had an imperfection. And the only way for it to fix that imperfection is by coming into this world and living. So it's now in you. What are you doing for it? Are you helping it or are you not helping it? Are you taking it on a ride or are you going to where it needs to go? So, you're a taxi driver that's just running the meter, or do you actually want to get this soul to where it needs to go? So we have to have compassion. Imagine you're a taxi driver Don't imagine you're a taxi driver. Imagine you're an Uber driver. You're an Uber driver, and the person, and it comes up on your phone where you need to take this person. You want to take this person to where they need to go because you exist in order to take them. Yes, you'll get paid, but it's not about that. It's about you taking them to where they need to go. And if you do that, you'll get paid. And believe it or not, everyone will be happy. And when they're happy, you'll feel happy. We are a taxi driver for our soul. It needs to go where it needs to go. How do I know where it needs to go? By the decisions that I make in my life. According to what? According to a value system. What if I don't want to? Tough luck. What if it's hard? Work harder. What if it's easy? Good for you. If you think about it, these are the decisions we make every day. I'm hungry. Go get some food. You should have made yourself lunch. Why didn't you make yourself lunch? This is the question that Rachel asks me every day. Why do you leave the house? You didn't think you were going to need lunch today? Every day I'm hungry at 1:30, and she says, you wonder why you're hungry. You come to work without lunch. You can't come to lunch with a credit. You can't come to work with a credit card and say, I'm going to buy lunch. You can't do that every day. You know how many days I just make sure I've got a credit card in my pocket because I'm going to buy lunch, but then I don't buy lunch because I can't afford to buy lunch every day. She says, why don't you just make lunch? Then you don't have this whole dilemma. I don't know, didn't think about it. Yes, you did. I told you this morning. Yeah, but I didn't want to. Why didn't you want to? Because I just eaten breakfast. I wasn't hungry. I couldn't think that I could possibly be hungry later in the day. I know why you're laughing, because you are all the same as me. I know, you're not married to Rachel. So, I know who Rachel's married to. So, how do you know what to do? Well, we have a guide. Not always is it impulsive. Not always do we know. We have a guide. It's called the Torah. Torah is the way in which we interact spiritually with this world. You don't want to do that? That's fine. I don't want to take lunch. That's fine. I survive. Plenty of people don't follow the wisdom of the spirituality of Torah, and they live happily ever after. But if you want to have compassion on your soul, you say, what does my soul need? Why do I as a guf, why do I as a body, my consciousness, which is a part of my body, it's part of my physical entity, why do I have consciousness in order to make decisions, in order to take my soul on a journey? I am just a chariot for my life. I'm separating myself from my life, you'll notice, but that's only for the sake of talking about these two. It's like talking about one side of a coin. By default, you acknowledge there's another side to a coin. You can't say, this is a one-sided coin. It's always got two sides. It may not have anything on the other side, but it's got two sides. So I'm talking about the guf and the neshama, the body and the soul, the merkava, the chariot and the life inside, but that's only for the sake of the discussion. Of course, it's pretty much one. So I've got to live my life. And then I need someone who's going to be by my side, because, as I said before, I can only push myself so far. I can only learn so much because I'm such a subjective creature. I'll tell you the most beautiful thing that happened in my life yesterday. So yesterday, Rachel and I were having a discussion, and where am I? Yeah, we were having a discussion, and she said, I need more time to do gardening. I was like, wow. You need more time to do gardening? She said, yeah. I always feel so good after I'm in the garden. I feel so good after I've worked with the veggie patch or the veggie boxes that we've got. I need more time. And the reason why this was so special is because lately she's been really bothered. And we weren't sure, why is she bothered? Why she's feeling frustrated? Is it because of work? Is it because of the family? Turns out, and we're like, maybe she, you start thinking, maybe you need to study, maybe you need a career change, maybe you need this, maybe you need that. You go all over the place. But the truth is, I was just putting suggestions forward of if I was feeling a bit off, what would I start assuming? And many times, how many times I've been at Spiritgrow. I'll be very honest, I've been here. I'm like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. I just want to teach. So I've thought about, maybe I should just quit Spiritgrow and just go get a job somewhere where I can teach, until I realize there's no one just looking to employ someone who's going to teach and do no admin, take no responsibility, live on nothing. I just want to teach. That's not how life works. And you snap back into it, get back to work, you idiots. Go on, you work hard, you can teach tonight. If you work hard and you make a bit of money for the organization, you can pay for advertising, people will know there's a class, and you can teach. Whoopie-doo. Your dream comes true if you put in a bit of hard work. No, I just want to work for someone else. Let them do all that. And, you go through this process. So I always assume a career change, a change of how I'm doing things will change everything. So I'm suggesting that to Rachel. Maybe change what she's doing. She says, and then she, we had this discussion once, and then she says, I just need to do more gardening. It's like, it's not at all what I was thinking. I was thinking how you have to get out there more. Maybe you have to get out there in a different way. Why? Because that's what I do. I get out there. Rachel doesn't like to get out there. She didn't need to go change the world. I'm always thinking, I think I need to change the world this way. Tomorrow I'm going to change the world that way. Next year I'm going to work on this project. Rachel doesn't want to work on projects. Just wanted to work in the garden. And why that was so beautiful is because I realized I don't even think like that. I like working in the garden with her, but I don't miss working in the garden. I don't think of doing these sorts of by myself sort of activities. The only thing I like to do by myself is be by myself. Sometimes I just like to go away. But it's not to do anything in specific. I'll go to the Dandenongs, go for a walk for 5 hours. That's all. I'm good. But for her, it was something much more profound, and I hadn't thought about that. So I need her because I don't even think like her. I don't even think like her. It didn't even occur to me. I didn't even know how to think like that. And yet that's the secret to the happiness in that single moment. So we need this soulmate. That may have been one of the worst examples possible, but we need that soulmate because they are the strength to our weakness. They are the edge and onwards of what we don't know, of what we can't be. And so when we talk about now in context of tikkun of the soul, when we talk about the healing and the betterment of the soul, what if there is something you need to do and you have the strength to do it, but you do not have the brain to develop the thinking to do it, but that will only happen if you're with someone who does. So let's say my neshama, very crassly, let's say my soul, its tikkun is it needs to work with vegetables. Why? Because in a previous life, I just wasted fruit and veggies. I used to just chuck it all out. So in this life, I need to overcome this love, this wrongdoing of baltashchis, of wastage. And so in this life, I need to not only ensure that there's no wastage, I need to be a part of the reproduction of fruit and veggies in this world. I enjoy it. I do enjoy it. However, it never would have occurred to me until Rachel says, hey, this Sunday we're going to do the garden. So all my being, I can talk, I can give shiurim, it's nothing until Rachel comes and says, let's do the garden together. That is an incredible moment. Of course I potentially could have done that because I can do the garden, but I never would have brought myself to that without her taking me. And we had to go through 11 years of marriage. I had to go through 22 years of life in order to meet her, to marry her and go through everything and have 4 kids to bring me to a point of where I'm going crazy just so my wife says, come, do the garden with me this Sunday. I would be nowhere without her. Not only that, but the situation brought me to the point of tikkun. But it was my wife who does the tikkun with me. It's my wife who does the moment of truth for my soul with me. That is her speaking to me. It is her neshama is speaking to her. Her neshama guides her personality. Her neshama guides. She is a merkava for her own soul. But she has brought me to a point. But because of her particular spiritual way of connecting with the world via the garden, she has taken me into that. And when I work in the garden as a physical person, I am overcoming the spiritual wrongdoing of my previous life of wasting fruit and veggies. How? Because I'm now an enabler of life. I'm enabling life, but it's only because she has taken me there. There was some sort of natia, some sort of tendency on her part to work in the garden. My love for her attaches me to her, so I go to the garden with her. So the situation has been created, but I've only gone there because of her. But this can only happen. What if Rachel said, come do the garden with me? Let's say I didn't love her. Let's say, the garden. You go do the gardening by yourself. I've got a real life. She says, but we need to spend time together. No, we don't. I don't really love you. So if I didn't love her, I wouldn't do anything for her unless it was fun for me. But when I come to realize, hey, there's something in the way she wants to live life that is good for me. And she says the same thing. There's something in how he's living life that's good for her. And neither of us necessarily enjoy it. I'm not saying you have to do everything that your spouse wants you to do. I'm not saying, he or she wants to do this, you've got to go along with it. But it's something that there's a chemistry when we do it. There's a joy when we do it. But it's not where I necessarily would have gone. But in that moment, in my respect for her and my love for her, you see, my example's letting me down because it's not a true example. It's a real example, but I don't know if that's my Gilgal. But if I didn't love her, why would I follow her? So what we have to appreciate is that our soulmate is not the love of my life and I've got to honor her. I've got to realize that being with her is where I'm going to get my tikkun. Being with her is where I'm going to get the correction within my own self. Somehow through the laws of hashgacha pratis, through the laws of divine providence, of everything being exactly the way it is, I'm going to end up, because of her being in a better situation. That's the whole concept of a soulmate, that it's because of them that you're better off. It's not just, hey, it's nice to have some help on the side. It's not that. It's that your success is in them. And you need to be with them to reach that success. Yes, it might be you doing the success, but it's only through them that you've come to the success. So this idea of the reincarnation with the soulmate is that that person, that soul, has a way of being able to move you along to where you need to be. And they don't even realize that. You don't realize that you're helping your soulmate, and your soulmate doesn't realize they're helping you. As in, you don't go, oh, I think that was the moment, we're done here. You don't know. But through the laws of hashgacha, through the laws of providence, you have been brought together to constantly live together. And if there's love, you walk on one path, and if there isn't love, you're going to be living two parallel lives. You're not in a relationship that's going to lead to tikkun. So there's a macro thing of it's brought you to the garden or whatever, but the micro thing is that you had to be in the garden. You had to grow the fruit and veggies. You had to be mechape. You had to change the wrong that had happened. And then at the end of 120 years, your soul goes up and it reflects and it's able to see its life in this world, and it's also able to see what it needed to achieve. And it sees it doesn't see that it did something wrong in the previous life. It sees what it needs to achieve, because the life we live is nothing. The life we live is it doesn't exist in real life. All this, it's not real. I'm not real, you're not real, as in it's real to us, but in context of, it's like holding a flame. You light a match at 12 o'clock midday in the middle of summer. Light a match and hold it up to the sun and go, wow, what an incredible flame. Your flame doesn't exist. The light of your flame doesn't exist. The flame exists, but the light is not there because it's completely enveloped by the light of the sun. Your match gives off no light. It is completely consumed. It's not touching the sun, but it doesn't exist. The flame itself does. That's where the metaphor falls away. But don't worry about that. That's why we have metaphors, to explain an aspect. So when you live your life here, it's like, oh, this is it. Oh, this is it. This is it. When you die, your soul is like, that's nothing. I can see what I am, and I can see what I needed, and it can see, did it live a life of tikkun? Did it live a life of that? Was it able to move into the consciousness of its host, of its guf? And was it able to move it into a point of tikkun? And if the answer is yes, then it goes into Gan Eden, it goes into the Garden of Eden. Not as in, hey, we get to frolic in the tall grass, but it gets to move into a state of unification with itself. And if it doesn't, it remains incomplete. And the parts of itself that did good get to be unified within itself, and the parts that still need tikkun, boom, get born again. Get born again. And it's not that Menachem's coming back. My next soul's not going to be, hey, chirpy Menachem. My next soul could be like, I don't know, some sort of frightening, boring person, who knows what. Because it's got new characteristics, it's got new nature, it's got new nurture. It's not me. It's not even related to me. It's not going to be my cousin. It's not my grandchild. It's someone else. But it will come back. If God forbid it needs to come back, it will come back, and it will come back with an aspect of Rachel's soul, of my wife, hopefully, unless I get reincarnated into a chicken or something, in which case it may not have Rachel by its side, although she loves animals, so maybe it could be good. Anyway, so, but if my soul needs to come back as a person, the chances of it coming back and having the opportunity to meet Rachel's soul again is there, because my soul, remember what I said, that the women that female souls don't get reincarnated the same way, that my soul needs it. So poor Rachel, who's from my soul group, needs to come back. It won't be Rachel. This time it could be, I don't know, a 6'5" redhead. It could be anything. But it's not Rachel, won't have her personality, but it's the soul again has what it takes to heal and fix the soul of my soul, the spark that is my soul. So we're coming back. So let's now think about this. How many times has your soul been here? How many times has the part of your soul, and are you the last part of your soul? And if you live your life, a life of meaning and a life of discipline and a life of spirituality doesn't mean meditating on the mountain. Spirituality means a life of consciousness, of mindful being, of awareness of the importance of one being alive in this moment, in this place, in this time. And I can live like that as many moments of my life as possible, so that every engagement with everything is meaningful, so that when I drink this whiskey, it's not just whiskey. This is kosher whiskey. That's number one. So it's permitted to me. Number two, it's being used in a shiur. You know, think about it. What are the chances? What are we drinking? Monkey's shoulder. You know how many bottles of that stuff they produce? What were the chances that dafka, this bottle was going to be in our shiur tonight? And that I didn't drink it before the shiur. I drank it during the shiur. What are the chances? So in this moment, there's a brilliant connection between me and the whiskey. The whiskey will benefit from the Torah that we've learnt, and I will move on. You know, what were the chances? What were the chances? What were the chances that the air you're breathing right now, the soul of that air would be used so that you could learn? What are the chances that the pants that you're wearing, that the food that you ate, you know, it has been a meaningful engagement? Because if we have meaningful engagements every moment of our life, one of those engagements is the moment of tikkun for our soul. One of those moments is going to be the moment in which our soul moves into a place of being absolutely corrected to the way it was when it was first created prior to Adam eating from the tree of knowledge. Prior to Adam, do you know what? Imagine, you know, we always imagine, Vayachul, you say on Friday night, Vayachul Hashemayim, and Hashem completed creation, and it was quiet in the world. The first Friday night was silent, and it was perfect. You know, it actually wasn't perfect anymore, but let's pretend it was perfect, and it was beautiful. The waters were flowing, and the grass was growing, and it was this tranquility. Imagine your soul, and that's a physical manifestation of a spiritual reality. Imagine your soul can return to that tranquility. And it can. You can return to that tranquility. And as you go on the journey of getting close to that tranquility, you begin to experience it as a human in this world. And that's where this becomes so cool. It's not like, hey, when you die, I mock it because it's not what's going to happen. When we die, we're not going to sit on park benches and picnics with our family. When we die, it's going to be so much cooler than that. But when we live, that's what's important. How are you going to live? We're going to live in a way that as you become more conscious, as you become more mindful, as you become more soul-centric, and so you're living a life which is becoming disciplined, and then it moves from being disciplined to becoming natural, and you shift your thinking. Imagine you thought about life the way I did just now. You say, oh, Menachem, that'd be very stressful. No, it would be amazing. It's amazing. See, the Kabbalists, you know what, they were so lucky. The Kabbalists were people that walked around living life constantly like this. So imagine a Kabbalist went through trauma, I'll tell you, there were Kabbalists in the Holocaust. Take Rabbi Akiva, because the Holocaust is too close to home. Take Rabbi Akiva. He lives in the times of Rome. Rome killed, I don't know how many millions of Jews. Year on year on year on year. They would round them up and put them in the circus. They'd have to fight against hungry lions. That was just stupid. No one ever had a chance of living. So you take Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva is 120 years old. He's an old, frail man. It's amazing that he's still alive. People didn't live that long. He lives a long life. And instead of dying from disease and old age, and cardiac failure, what does he die from? His skin is combed with metal combs by the Romans, with hot combs, and they flay his skin, and that's how he dies. And he's smiling. And why is he smiling? Because like, oh, this is what it's like. This is what it's like to die al Kiddush Hashem. This is an incredible moment. I never had this opportunity to die for being Jewish. This is an incredible moment. You say, what's he, Meshuggah? It's like, he's not Meshuggah at all. He's just transcendental. He's just living a life where he looks at everything different. Did it hurt him? I'm sure it did. But did the hurt bother him? No, it didn't. Of course he felt the pain, but he processed the pain differently. With the study, what I love about the mindfulness studies, I read a lot of studies on mindfulness, because basically all these studies, or broaden it, the studies on neuroplasticity, which is the fact that the brain is always changing. It's changing. Experiences change our brain, new habits change the brain, new behaviors change the brain over a period of time, and period of time is like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, short amounts of time. 10 years, incredible. Literally the brain, it's changing, physically changing, in size, it's incredible. So imagine you're living a life of spiritual discipline. You say, I love this. They put Buddhist monks in a lab and they're like, oh wow, isn't that cool what mindfulness can do for the brain? Of course it's awesome, but do you know how many disciplines are excited? I don't get excited by the study. I feel vindicated by the study. That a life of discipline is good. Depends what the discipline is. But that different disciplines will impact different parts of the brain. If it's a discipline in love, if it's a discipline in time, it's a discipline in making your bed, it's a discipline in this. These are all changing the neuro pathways of the brain. They are all changing the shape of the brain. They're changing our responses and ultimately changing the whole way we're experiencing life. So imagine you live a life like Rabbi Akiva did, where for 80 years of his life, he lived a life of mysticism. 80 years of mysticism, where he's constantly thinking, this whiskey, this is not just whiskey, this is a soul. Oh, this is not just a phone, it's an energy. Imagine you lived your life like that. When you come to be tortured, of course it's painful and of course it's hurt, but it's not a source of angst. It's not a source of torment. It's a source of an interesting form of pleasure, of an experience like no other. And it's not anything I wish on anyone or that I crave to go through myself. But I do crave the position of where I become mentally so shifted away from my subjective pleasure-seeking way of being to an altruistic place of spirituality where my only concern is my soul and what I am doing for my soul. And what happens is, as you become concerned and you live that discipline, you start living in the Garden of Eden. You start living within a consciousness which is just this incredible space of spiritual experience in this world. You don't move to any mountains. Its food tastes different. People look different, time moves differently, and your experience of the world is completely different. It becomes what's called tainug. It's pleasurable. What's pleasure? It's a person getting in touch with their soul. The pleasure is where you're getting in touch with your deeper parts. Imagine you can live in a permanently pleasurable space. You don't do this for the pleasure. The pleasure happens because you're living the discipline. And so why we ran this series on reincarnation is because many of you are married, many of us are married, many of us are seeking to be married or seeking a relationship, and those who are in need to appreciate what it is that we've attached ourselves to, and those who are not married and are seeking to marry should be aware what it is that they want to look for. And then when you're married, you have compassion for your soul, and therefore you fall in love with the person you're with because that person is the best thing for your soul possible. And if we live a life of love, of consciousness, disciplined by the mitzvot, informed by the Torah, then we begin to experience tainug, absolute pleasure in our life. And ultimately the soul doesn't become a match in front of the sun, but it becomes a flame within the sun. It has no heat for itself, has no light for itself, because it is the sun. And that is what I want to say l'chaim to us. L'chaim.